Okay, everybody, thanks again for coming. We're going to start out today. Scott Howson has a couple of remarks he wants to make, and then we'll open it up for questions. If you do have a question, we'll ask that you raise your hand, and we'll get a mic to you. Scott.
Thank you, and thank you for coming here today. One update for you on training camp. Radek Martinek will not be here for the first day of camp. He lost a very dear friend in the awful tragedy in Russia, and he's going to travel back to the Czech Republic for a funeral during the week, and he'll be here Friday. We expect that he'll get his medical, Friday's medical and physical day. He'll get his medical on Saturday morning, and he'll be on the ice for Saturday morning. There's a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of optimism around our team. You can feel it in the community. You can feel it amongst the players. And the hard part starting Friday, and that's actually transferring that optimism, that energy into wins. We're excited to get started. Scott and I were both in Traverse City over the weekend at the rookie tournament. Came back last night. It was nice to get going there. We had a good first day. We beat the Red Wings 7-3 and lost to Buffalo yesterday 6-3. So our kids are there for 2 more days. They'll all arrive back here on Thursday, and then we'll get going on Friday. So again, thanks for coming. We're happy to take questions.
Hello? 1 second. First question is going to Larry Larson, 610 WTV and radio, now in Southern California. Larry, can you hear me?
Absolutely, I can hear you.
Who is your state?
Out there, Scott Howson and all the players, the best of look, I hope things for all the media, for all of you out there, my friends, I hope things are going as well as they are for me out here in Southern California. My question, of course, goes to Scott Arniel. Scott, I'm starting a new adventure out here in Southern California. You started a new adventure last year as head coach of the Blue Jackets. Could you tell everybody how this year is different for you from approaching coaching and approaching the whole coaching the Blue Jackets situation? I'm not talking about personnel, just from a coaching standpoint, how things are different this year than they were 1 year ago.
Is that it, Larry?
I didn't hear you, Larry. What did you say? Obviously, real good question. You know, this year is so much more relaxing than last year. For all of us, our staff, our coaching staff here in Columbus, our coaching staff in Springfield, for everybody, we were all new. And it certainly was a lot of preparation. It was a lot of trying to figure out how we were going to handle this, obviously, training camp week, and then we had our trip to Sweden, certainly laying out the season. There was lots of excitement, lots of expectations, and this year is, it's certainly we've done all our work in June and July, and you know, we've also got, we've changed our team, but things are so much more relaxed for myself, for our staff, so I'm really looking forward to being able to just sort of let things play themselves out as camp starts on Friday.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks. See you later. Okay, now everybody else wants some questions.
He asked all of them. He got none left.
Larry's the only guy
That's it.
question. He doesn't work here anymore?
Scott, how many jobs are up for grabs in training camp? How many spots are you looking to fill, and how many guys to fill them?
Yeah, I think that obviously we have some numbers that we were probably in this position last year. I think we had 21-way contracts, although we did end up having 3 players make our team out of training camp that didn't, that maybe weren't expected to be here in Mackenzie Wilson and Nate Gannon. But this year, there are some spots. We certainly, whether it's those guys fighting for those 6-7 spot on defense, or maybe an extra 1 or 2 spots up front. We have some young guys that are pushing for opportunity to be in our lineup. We also have some older players that are looking to maybe have a shot at playing here in Columbus.
For both Scotts, you obviously added some fresh faces that have led to the optimism and everything. A lot of the season will still depend on how your goaltenders play. I just wondered, preparation this year and your feelings about Mason and also the goaltenders in general.
I think obviously, as you know, the first big step we did at the end of the season, Scott and I met with Steve, and we talked a lot about what it takes to be a #1 goaltender in the NHL, and it isn't just technique, it isn't just your skill set. I think that the biggest part of the game for a goaltender in this league, no different than an NFL quarterback, is the mental side, because there's so much pressure thrown at you. So much expectations. The spotlight always, the last source of defense, and everything. The whole emphasis comes to you. And I think that the one area where we talked to Steve and we tried to formulate put a game plan together was that we went out and hired Ian Clark, goaltender coach, a full-time goaltender coach, which we hadn't had before. And I'd had some history with Ian, and Scott got to meet him, interview him, and we were both very comfortable that he'd be the right guy for Steve. And they've had numerous sessions up in Toronto, both on the ice and off the ice. They really got to know each other. And then here, this past week and a half, they've been together again, and along with Mark Dekanich. So they've been really kind of sort of building first a relationship, and I think that's so important with that position and that coach. So, and then the last part I'll say, and I don't want to take it all away from Scott, but we're a better hockey team in front of them. I think that we have the ability to score more goals, be it on our power play or 5-on-5, which can reduce a little bit of that stress and strain on your goaltender. And I think that our back end is a lot better in our defense, and hopefully we're going to, both on our penalty kill and our defensive zone play, that we're not giving up the quality chances. So if Steve can feel a little bit more comfortable in the net, knowing that he's got a little bit better team in front of him, that hopefully will go a long way towards him having a strong year.
He's not the first goalie to take a step back after starting very strongly in this league. Carey Price did it. We go way back to Grant Fuhr, Tom Barrasso. A lot of Hall of Fame goaltenders have gone through this growth period, and we know the talent's there. We've seen it, and it's up to us now to get it out of him, and it's up to Steve to make sure that he's going to get it out of himself. And we both feel very strongly he's in that space right now, and we're going to help him get there.
Coach, addressing the power play, that was an area the team needed to work on last year. You did address it with the addition of Carter and Wisniewski. What do you see in your strategy that's altering with the new personnel?
Well, I think that the other person that got added to that was Todd Richards on my coaching staff. Todd's had, who's obviously been a head coach in this league, who's going to be very valuable for me, not just on the power play. I think that the two of us are going to kind of tackle that one. I think that Todd has experience from San Jose, where he worked with the power play, obviously with Pittsburgh's organization. But last year in Minnesota, he had one of the better power plays for pretty much 2/3 of the season. He had some major injuries where he lost a lot of his key personnel, but he's a guy that I think will really help that group. And you're bringing in a weapon like a Carter that's a threat. Anytime the puck's on his stick, you have the big shot of Wisniewski. Vinny Prospel's another guy that's a power play guy. I mean, we have our pieces in Umberger and Broussard and Grant Clitsome. So, and the thing that what I found last year on our power play was that everybody stayed real close, whether it was one guy or two guys stayed real close to Rick Nash. So if you have other weapons, they can't be so particular. They can't do that one style of penalty kill where they just load up on Rick, and it'll allow other people to really get their opportunities.
It's for Scott Howson. Coach talked about having a better team in front of the goalie, and I wonder if you can sort of talk about whether there is a sense of urgency with this year's team. I don't want to talk about expectations necessarily, but obviously you made some big moves this summer. Is there a feeling of urgency in the building overall? I
think there definitely is. I mean, John P. McConnell stepped up in a big way here to increase the payroll. And I think the root of it all is we have a franchise player in Rick Nash that just turned 27 in June. And, we don't want to waste. He's entering his prime now. The next 4, 5, 6, 7 years should be his prime. And we want to try and surround him with a better team. And hopefully we've done that. Both Scott and I talk to Rick all the time. And one of his consistent requests was, get us another All-Star. And we've got that in Jeff now. So I think there is a sense of urgency. I think the players feel it, and certainly everybody else does.
I think that the one point on that too is that where Rick's 27 and Wisniewski's 27, Tutin's 27, the Pot's 25. Our group is, our core group that we've locked up here are all pretty close to the same age. So if you talk about expectations right now, or you talk about 1 year from now or 2 years from now, we're real excited about our age of our group. We're not 32 years old. You know, we're not an older team that needs to be great right now because of the age.
Coach, obviously getting off to a good start is important, but after what happened last year, have you put much thought into how you're going to get the team to get that consistent effort throughout the year?
Yeah, obviously last year's start was tremendous for us to get going. You know, we certainly we went through a stretch where our play deteriorated quite a bit, but you know, I think this group bringing in 5 or 6 new faces will help. Hopefully not allow some of that stuff to happen. I think that, you know, I talked about last year a few times that, you know, it's frustrating when, you know, everybody talked about December being a tough month, and sure enough, we had a bad December. And I think that when you bring new personnel in, I think that, you know, our message coming out of training camp is it's 82 games, and if you start to look at 82, you're going to have a long year. And I think when we were 14-6, we were thinking about March. And we were thinking about April, when coming out of training camp, all we're going to worry about is, again, it's going to be worry about Nashville on the first game of the season, and then when we're done, then we move on to Minnesota. I talked often last year about staying in the now, not getting too far ahead of ourselves, and I think at times last year maybe I allowed it, maybe it's a little bit of our history here, so we get thinking too much about the big picture and not focusing on what you can control, and that's pretty much what's happening today. And I'd like to think that, you know, Vinny Prospal has won a Stanley Cup. Jeff Carter, who's been to the Stanley Cup, Wisniewski, who's played in real good hockey teams, that they have the experience to sort of help this group at those times when times start to become tough.
Coach, last year at this event, you talked about running 3 scoring lines, and that, you know, talk certainly has been reincarnated this year with the acquisition of Carter and Prospal. What are you looking for in camp and beyond to determine whether you're going to be able to make that work when the season comes around?
Well, a lot of that will rely on our young players. You know, I think the Johanssons, the Kovaliks, the Matty Calverts, the Atkinson. You know, it depends what that lineup is. I mean, it's easy to say that I want to throw 9 offensive guys out there, but we don't know how they're going to play in training camp. I mean, that will be left up to them. If they make it very difficult on us, you know, come October, when we're in cut-down mode, and we've got these guys here because they've been very good through training camp, it gives us a real good option to play that way. So at the end of the day, for me, it's the players deciding. You know, they're going to decide in camp. Nobody's given anything. Like I said earlier, Scott stood up last year at the meeting, and he said that even though there were all the one-way contracts, jobs were open for those that came and put their best foot forward. And like I said, some guys made our hockey team that probably many weren't expecting. The same thing happens this year. We need to play the people, reward the people that come in and play hard and play well and earn a job.
You touched on Vinny Prospal, bringing him in. This is kind of for both. Obviously, it wasn't on your original game plan to go do that. With Huselius going out, what was your thought process, Scott, in regards to going and getting him? Do you think he'll be the same dynamic as Huselius or something different? And then, Coach, what exactly do you have plans for him? Is it the same role as Huselius or something different?
I had actually talked to Vinny's agent about a week before Christian got hurt, and was sort of mulling it over in my mind. Didn't think we had the right opportunity for him, because I knew he was going to really be focused on playing in a top 6 role, and I wasn't sure we were going to be able to do that. And then when Christian got hurt, that's when it just seemed like a natural fit. We looked at 5 or 6 guys at that time. There were some unrestricted free agents out there, and he just went right to the top of the list. It was unanimous. I phoned Scott, and he looked at him too and said, let's try and get this guy. So we just think he's going to come in and fill that role. He's a different player than Christian. He's a little stronger, probably physically. Christian's got world-class skill, obviously. So he's just going to come in, I think, and it'll be up to Scott and up to Vinny to where he plays, but we certainly see him in that top scoring role.
I think the one thing about Vinny, he can play both sides. I think that you know, he's a guy that you know, is real strong on the puck. Like I said earlier, he's won a cup. He's had experience. You know, one thing about him, up until last year, he's played close to 80, 82 games. I think he's 30 games away from 1,000 in his career, which says an awful lot. He's been around. He's been a lot of experience, a lot of different situations. I know John Tortorella is very upset that he's losing him from the Rangers this year. They had to sign so many of their young guys that you know, he squeaked through the cracks for us. But real professional, a guy that, for me, whether it's with Carter and Nash or whether it's with, Vermette, Umberger, Broussard, I'm not sure yet. That's going to be all the fun part of kind of training camp. I'm going to use guys in different roles and kind of really get a feel for where I see that chemistry early on. And they have a tendency to sometimes slot themselves in those spots.
Have you decided who's going to wear the A along with Nash, and how will that process work?
You know what? Obviously, we have RJ obviously has one from last year, which will stay the same. Anton Vermette, Anton Vermette was one of our alternates as well. You know what? I think what I'll do is I'll get the core group together, our top 6 or 7 guys, and we'll discuss it obviously a little bit with them. We'll talk to their coaches and Scott. And to me, that'll just be. I think that everything else, RJ and obviously Rick will stay the same, and from there, I'm more concerned about our leadership group, which usually is a lot more than just 3 people. So we'll let it just play itself out over training camp.
The franchise history almost forced the Blue Jackets' hands at times to play younger players who might have been better for more seasoning in the minors. Do you think that is this the time that Savard, Moore, Atkinson, Johansson, that they can be factors now, or would you prefer to have them come up later?
Well, Scott can talk a little bit. The acquisitions by us, I think that the biggest thing is that buys time. Wisniewski and Martinic buy time on our defense. Jeff Carter buys time up front with our forwards. Prospel buys time for us up front with some of our forwards. So, if anything, we're not putting people in positions where they're in a position where they're probably going to fail or have a tough go at it. The NHL, especially those top positions, are very, very difficult, and it takes some guys a long time to learn how to play there. And however we can help them get to that role, if it's by being patient with them, obviously we need to do that. But there are those exceptions. There are those players that that just jump by it and can go right in and play. So we'll get a real good test. We watched a bunch of them obviously up at Traverse City this past week, and then some of them last year in Springfield. And certainly, these guys got to step up in training camp. We want to see what they can do in training camp, and they can't just be average. They've got to be better than the players they're competing against for jobs.
I think we've put ourselves in a position now where we don't have to force anybody into the lineup. And the way this league works is when a young player's ready, he shows you. And when he's ready, he plays. And it'll be up to each of those young players to show us that they're ready. Leave no doubt in our mind this guy can help us. And if that's the case, then there'll be a spot for him here.
Mr. Howson, you went out and signed some AHL veterans this season for Springfield, seemingly, in Alexander Giroux and Martin St. Pierre. If these guys push for playing time at training camp, is that something that you're looking at in terms of where you might be able to move some of the one-way contracts to fit these guys in?
Again, if they're ready and they have great camps, and we do have 2 or 3 spots. We don't know if a spot's going to go to a real young player or one of these players that's been in the AHL that's had tremendous success in the AHL. So if they're ready, we'll make a spot. I don't foresee anybody pushing one of our veterans out on a one-way contract, but that's what training camp's for.
I think that on that note, we've got a real good team, whether on paper, if you want to make your own lineups right now, we've got depth. We've got depth at every position. We've got some real good American League experience, whether they crack our lineup or they start down there. Where if we do get in an injury situation, we've got some people that are pushing from below, which you always want. You always want that competitive competition.
Lost Chris Russell in the owners tournament last year. Wondering if, as the coach of the GM, does that tournament, does it make you a little uneasy? Have you considered maybe a different format to avoid such a thing, to prevent an injury to the key player?
You're always concerned. I mean, one of the goals to get through training camp healthy. And the owners tournament is something that's we really like. The owners really like it. I think it gives the guys a little excitement, a little energy right away. We did push it back from day 1 to day 2 to give the guys a chance to skate a little bit, but it's always a risk. But somebody can get hurt in a drill too. So I don't think in our tournament we've seen the players have competed very hard, but there's been no maliciousness. So it is what it is. And if somebody gets hurt, he could have got hurt in a drill too.
And I think the other thing too, because we play 3 games in 2 days, 3 days after camp opens up, it gets these guys kind of in that game mode. I know they're skating now and they're doing their off ice, on ice stuff, but that little tournament will get them thinking more about structure, a little bit more about style of play, and a little bit more game-like, and hopefully it helps us a little bit in those first couple of games.
Coach, you said near the end of last year that you learned a lot about how to handle travel, West Coast travel in particular. How will you maybe deal with that differently this year?
Well, I think that, obviously we've gone over our schedule. We've looked at whether we stay over an extra day and then travel home the following day. We did that last year, and it actually helped us. I think the 3 games after our Western swings, we won every one of them, so that was an important move. I think that you have to really balance the days where we maybe had a lot more off days, or we tried to have a practice in there, maybe just going out for half an hour working on your power play, or going out and just doing a little bit more of structure when some things aren't quite up to speed with some of your game. That maybe we do that a little bit more, and I think that anytime we can gain some rest for the players is first and foremost important, but also I think we also have to make sure we do a good job with our attention to detail if it needs to be at that time.
As tragic the summer was with 3 players dying, and also with the head injuries to Savard, Crosby, is the NHL doing more for checking that baseline for concussions and head injuries, and do you think that will impact games? Will the games be called a little bit differently perhaps this year because it's such a headline story right now?
Well, I think the NHL's been ahead of the curve in this baseline neuropsych testing. So it's mandatory for the players. Any player entering the league has to have it, and then you have a normal line to compare off of. So I don't think that's going to change. They're very vigilant in making sure the players do it. I don't know if the game's going to get called differently. I would suspect that when we have changed Rule 48 to now penalize a hit that's head-on, that's either targeted the head or directly hit to the head, and that's different from Rule 48 last year, so that part will get called differently. But I think the players are gaining more and more respect for each other too, and trying to be careful with their heads.
I think there is one, right near the end of the year, the change that they made with the medical personnel, where if anybody showed any signs of wobbling, can't get up, or obviously, I'm not sure exactly, but they really work with the doctors and the trainers and putting a set of rules in there, and you have to take your 15 minutes if they feel that you might have been lost maybe consciousness or whatever. You got to go for 15 minutes automatic, no matter if you're on the road and it's a visiting team doctor looking at you, or you're at home. So, and then from there, whether you're allowed to come back would be up to that doctor.
In addition to, you mentioned, I'm over here. That's okay. Not having injuries during camp. Just what do you want, like a month from now, with the new pieces coming in? How do you want to feel going into the year? What are you looking for, I guess, out of the next month as you mix and match and try to figure out what?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that these guys really get to know each other. We have lots of new faces, both off the ice, that we can come together as a team. On the ice, we're going to have some. We're going to have some different looks, and sort of getting ourselves gelling as one unit, playing the same style of hockey night in, night out. I think that we have an opportunity to come together a little bit. We're going down to Miami, Ohio, a week before training camp. We're going to go down and do a little bit of team bonding down there. So hopefully that'll help us come together. I think Sweden was good for us last year, where we all got away together. So, coming to a training camp, you really want to make sure that you're hardened and you're ready to go for when that season starts. And so that means guys are familiar with each other and their style of play, and if it's your line mates or your D partner, and just being a caring group that is ready to take on a big challenge, which is 82 games in the Western Conference.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Right now we have